Welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast, episode 42.
After that, Somalia had a free college. You take a national entrance college exam, and the government tells you what to study. You don't have no choice. At that
Wow.
time, I was told that I'm going to be a physics major, and I'm going to start physics, and I didn't like what they picked for me. I want to be an engineer or a civil engineer. So the only option you had was if your family had some way of sending you overseas, then you could go out the country. But if you didn't have, then what the government told you to do.
My name is Alina Warwick, and today we have Abdulhamid Ali on the show. Abdulhamid had two different childhoods growing up in Somalia. Originally, he grew up in an established house with maids, a chauffeur. He went to a private boarding school, and life was really good. But at 10 years old, the Somalian's president was assassinated and the military coup took over. His dad worked for the government, and after he came back from his work travels, he was taken into prison and the family didn't see him for 3 years. When Abdulhamid came to the United States at 21 years old, he had to take ESL classes, so he started off like all the other immigrants at the very bottom. In fact, his very first job was a dishwasher at the college he attended. After graduating with a civil engineering degree, he got into the public sector. So in this episode, we will hear what his journey was like and what his deciding factor was to start a business where he now makes $15 million in annual revenue. So let's dive right in. All right, Abdulhamid, thank you so much for joining me on the Immigrant Entrepreneurs Podcast. I truly appreciate your time, and I'm really excited to talk to you because I read a little bit about you from the book Immigrant Hustle. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So let's talk about your immigrant journey. Tell us where you're from and when did you come to the United States?
Yes, I was born and raised in Mogadishu, Somalia, and I came to the United States in September of 1980.
1980. Okay. And how old were you?
I was 21 years old when I came.
Okay. And you came by yourself?
Yes.
And was it for school or did you meet some family members out here?
No, I came to go to school here because back in Somalia in those days, when you graduate from high school, then they had what they call national service, which was kind of a military. You kind of went to the army and you get some training through the army. And in 1977, 78, when I graduated, Somalia was in a transition, was on a war going on between Ethiopia and Somalia. And then you go and you kind of teach elementary schools and so forth. After that, Somalia had a free college. You take a national entrance college exam, and the government tells you what to study. You don't have no choice.
Wow.
At that time, I was told that I'm going to be a physics major, and I'm going to start physics, and I didn't like what they picked for me. I want to be an engineer or a civil engineer. So the only option you had was if your family had some way of sending you overseas, then you could go out the country. But if you didn't have, then what the government told you to do. So that's why I came here to study engineering.
Got it. Wow. So the government chose a career path for you.
Yes, you have no option. If they tell you you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a doctor. If they told you you're going to be a veterinarian, you're going to be a veterinarian. If they told you you're going to be a teacher, you will be a teacher. That was the way it worked way back in Somalia.
Wow, that's crazy. All right. So what was it like growing up in Somalia?
Well, Somalia had two periods in my mind. When I grew up, I was very fortunate. I grew up into a family. My dad was already elected member of parliament. So my dad, he was part of the MPs. You know, Somalia is different than here with their Congress and so forth.
Mhm.
He became a minister. He was a cabinet member. And one time he was the vice president of the parliament. So I had a really nice and very fortunate childhood.
Mhm.
We had a big home. We had cars. We had guards. We had maids. We had nannies. You name it.
A chauffeur, private boarding school.
Yeah, so I had a dream life till military coup, 1969, that took over. But even after that, my mom was very entrepreneurial. My dad went to prison for a while. and he came out and they became businessmen. But we were well off compared to a lot of other people in Somalia.
Why did your dad go to prison?
Because the military junta that took over, they didn't, anybody who was in the administration at that time went to political prisoners, basically. Actually, Somalia was the first true democracy in Africa in 1960, where a president was defeated in election and there was a peaceful transfer of power. Talk about that now in the United States.
Yeah.
The military took over. The military was more of a socialistic. I mean, they started having a socialist party, became very close to the Soviet Union and so forth. And we became more of a socialistic country at that time.
And this happened when your dad was traveling overseas. So was that when he came back and he was taken into prison and you guys didn't see him for a couple of years?
Yes, actually, my dad, when the October 21 was when the military took over. Before that, the president at that time in 1969 was assassinated, the elected president. So as my dad was in Europe, I think, traveling for government, and he was planning to come back anyway, even though my relatives kept telling him, if you come back, you're going to go to jail. But my dad was a real patriot. He didn't care. He came back and they picked him up from the airport and we didn't see him for 3 years.
And how old were you when this happened?
10 years.
10 years old. Wow. And so what was your life like after that?
My life really didn't change much, but I have to do a lot of growing up. I had a mom that I say was very entrepreneurial, and my mom, we are 6 of us. I had 2 older sisters than me, and I have a younger sister than me, and we were going to boarding school. But then I have a brother who's 8 years younger than me, and a brother who was just born when my dad went to jail.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a cousin of mine who was my nanny that really had a rough, it's tough to have a 10-year-old. They talked to me saying life is changing. And I noticed it. You don't have to see it. The driver wasn't there any longer. The guards were not led any longer. You know, you could see changes in the household.
Mm-hmm.
Or I called her my second mom, or my aunt, had to put me down to say, no, things are changing. And I was pretty much a spoiled brat boy. My dad would buy me anything I wanted, any toys I wanted. And she kind of told me life is changing now. I don't want you giving trouble to your mom. Your mom is going to be the provider of the family, and that you have to grow up. And our life really didn't change much, but I had to grow up pretty fast. I think we're all do that kind of a talk.
And you mentioned that all the money was gone. And was that when he went to prison, the government took all them, or the military took all the money?
I really didn't know how finances work, but I remember my mom and my aunt tell us, when your dad went to jail, because I guess he was getting a salary, and my dad always had even though he was the government, we had trucks. So we were in the trucking business. We had people to drive our trucks and so forth. But I remember my mom saying that when my dad went to jail, all the money she had in the house was 700 Somali shilling at that time, which basically would be, at that time, I think $1 will be traded into 4 Somali shillings. And her telling us, all we have is 700 shilling, guys. Your dad's not getting a salary. Our bank account is frozen, nothing. Even if I recall, we had some properties, rental properties. We had plenty of properties where the government took over the properties. So we were not getting any more income from those properties either.
Okay. And so what did your mom decide to do at that point?
Well, my recollection is my mom became very adventurous. I remember she invested into Somalia's livestock. They export a lot of livestock.
Okay.
She started buying livestock and exporting livestock and taking care of, getting to learn very quickly the trucking business. There was not a lot of women at that time involved in business. So she was the one signing the contracts, going back to the banks, going to the port to see what loads the trucks can carry. And even she managed to take one of our trucks to a neighboring country, Kenya. So she was a very courageous woman.
Okay, wow, that's amazing. Okay, so a couple of years later, 3 years later, your dad comes back home.
Mm-hmm.
And does your life change at all? Does your dad go back to the government sector? Does he pick up another job?
No, my dad came and he kind of started taking over the trucking business of the side, and my mom did something else on the side, to the point of my mom had her own properties. Now that they passed away, we have actually sold some properties that were only in my mom's name, not my dad's name. And the other properties we had were both on my mom and my dad's name. But my mom started doing her own business where she had a couple of other rental properties that she developed. She had a small apartment, and downstairs were a lot of little shops, tailor shop, a grocery shop. That was all about her. So, but they kind of divided the work when my dad came out.
Mhm.
And when my dad came, then that's the first time really we start spending time. We'll go to the beach. My dad was a good swimmer. I'm not a good swimmer at all. And that's the time we knew my dad would drop us to school, pick us up from the boarding school, go to the beach, and go here, take us to movies. And that's when I get to know my dad really well.
And so a couple years later, your dad was taken to jail again.
Oh, yes, because what happened is in Somalia, then after that, Somalia is kind of a clan-based society. There were some officers in the army, or whenever our clan base has done something, my dad was viewed one of the clan leaders. So he went to jail a couple of times, yes.
Wow. Okay. So I'm sure your mom was terrified, your dad going to jail a couple of times, and she's left with 6 kids by herself. Was there a point in her life where she said, you know what, we're going to leave Somalia for good and never return? Or did you guys remain in Somalia?
No, my dad he was never about to say that. And even though my mom's dad was a missionary, Islamic missionary.
Okay.
And he went and preached all over East Africa. So we had an avenue. My mom could go to her dad, and we could live with my grandfather outside of the country. But my dad and my mom was both saying, no, this is our country. This belongs to us. We're not going anywhere. Until the Civil War started.
And what happened with the Civil War?
Well, when the Civil War happened, we were here. But my dad had already passed away before the Civil War. Then after that, everybody, or even before the Civil War, I came to college here. My sisters followed me. My sister studied in the Eastern European countries, where she went to medical school, then she came back. My other sisters went to school in Somalia. They all came to the United States. Then slowly, when things were getting back, my whole family by 1988, 89, most except my older sister, who was a doctor, wasn't here. And she joined us in 1991 after the Civil War.
Got it. Okay. And so how did you choose United States? How did you choose to come study in the United States versus any other country?
It was just random. I left Somalia first to go to Saudi Arabia in 1979. And with the auspices, I might get a scholarship. But things didn't go the way I planned. At that time, my sister was in Romania, in Bucharest, to study.
Okay.
My mom came to Saudi Arabia to say, well, let's go to Romania to see if you can get a scholarship. While we were in Romania, my mom had a first cousin that worked for the United Nations, but he was based in Zagreb, Croatia at that time.
Okay.
And he came to Bucharest to talk to us, and then we went to stay with him for a while. And he was the one who started bringing up the United States. He told me, yeah, I could help you get a scholarship here in Yugoslavia. At that time, there was no Croatia, it was Yugoslavia.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling me, yeah, you could get a scholarship here in Yugoslavia, but if you really want to study somewhere engineering, I suggest you go to the United States. I had never decided ever to go to the United States. That was my uncle's idea. So we applied. The visa came. And I even remember the day I went to pick up the visa with my uncle. Well, the consulate lady told I didn't speak English at that time, but what the consulate lady in Zagreb told him, she was asking him, he said, what is he going to do? He said, well, first he's going to study English and he wants to study engineering. And she says, okay, since you're from Somalia, I'm going to send your papers to the consulate, the American embassy in Somalia. And your dad has to provide that he can sustain you studying there. And we wait a week. Surely we wait a week, the phone rings. They said, everything's in order. Come get your visa papers.
Yeah.
So my uncle takes me there. So I'm picking up and she goes, I'm going to tell you, he's never going to come back to Somalia. He goes to the US, he's never come. I remember that word stuck with me.
He told your father that?
No, she was a lady. She told
the lady.
In Yugoslavia, she told him that.
Wow. Okay. Wow. What a journey. Okay. So you come to study and you studied English and engineering in school?
Yeah, for the first 8 months, I went to ESL program in the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. and you had to take the TOEFL test and pass the TOEFL test with certain degree to get accepted in engineering school. Then I went to the university called, it's a Catholic university, private university in Milwaukee called Marquette University, that accepted me in the civil engineering program.
Got it. Okay. And did you have any family or friends when you moved to America?
I found some other Somalis living here, but I didn't have no friends or no relatives living in the United States.
Wow.
When I
Okay.
came to the university, there was another gentleman from Somalia. There were two guys from Somalia studying at the university, and there were guys from Sudan. So we had our own group of Horn of Africa students in the campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of,
Awesome.
they were older than me, guide me what to do, what not to do. So that was kind of nice.
Yeah. So they basically became your family.
Yeah, yes.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the struggles that you had to go through when you first immigrated. Okay. So I'm assuming that you didn't really know any English. So what other struggles did you experience?
The worst thing I remember was the food when I first came here. The food's so different in the US than, let's say, in Somalia or different countries. Here you see hamburgers, French fries. And then
Junk food.
in Somalia, boys are not taught how to cook. That's another bad thing that our culture has. Women cook and take care for you. So I had to learn, and the first couple of years, then so the food. The biggest thing was the food and the weather. Seeing the snow and the bitter cold, those were the first difficulties.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so did you take public transportation or did you have a car? How did you get around?
Oh, I used to take the bus, public transportation.
Okay. And did you get lost all the time or you were kind of able to maneuver around?
No, I was able to maneuver around.
Oh, okay, good. Awesome. What were some of the first jobs you had when you came to America?
Oh, that's easy. I was a dishwasher at the union at the University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, while I was studying ESL.
Okay, so you worked at school.
Yes.
Oh, got it. Did you have any other jobs after that?
Yes. Then I got a job as what was my second job? As a parking lot attendant. And I got a job as a security guard at a hotel. Then I had a job in the summer while I was going to engineering. Then I had some jobs working as a sidewalk inspector for a couple of months. And another year I had a little job where you go, I work for the Department of Natural Resources, where you go and inspect dams and so forth.
Mhm.
So different jobs. Couple when I was in university with engineering related, but basically the job I really enjoyed the most when I was going to college was working as a hotel as a security guard, because you can study and do your homework, write your projects a lot, working 12-hour shifts on Saturday and Sundays.
Okay, so before you tell our listeners about your company, tell me more about the path you took. And did you try to go into any other fields before starting your business?
Yes, when I graduated from school, I was hired by a private company, but that didn't last long. So I was hired by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation.
Okay.
And I started with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation in 1986. Then I was trained in how to be a construction inspection on the highways.
Mhm.
Later on, how to be a designer, helping the department put together plans and specifications for highways. And my career grew up. You start with the CE1, then you become a civil engineer 2, then you become a civil engineer 3, and then you become a project manager. And I was pretty lucky that I became quite successful. I became a supervisor, and after that, I became a chief engineer, where I had a whole district that I was managing. But then a friend of my wife, a cousin of my wife, my ex-wife was an Italian American, and her cousin was in the civil engineering business, but he was in the private sector. And actually, it was his idea, really, for about 3-4 years before I decided to go, that he was saying, you know what, why are you working for the government? Me and you could have our own business, and we could do consultant engineering, and we could do this. And I was saying, well, let me think about it. Let me think about it.
And what was his specialty?
He was the same as me. He was a civil engineer. He was doing the
Oh,
same
got
thing
it.
I was doing, but in the private sector.
Okay.
And then in about the year 2000, I started not enjoying my work. I mean, government work is really good here in the United States. You make good money, you have a good benefits, good retirement. Then I decided to leave and start this company that now I own with my business partner, Frank Damaro.
And so, what was that deciding factor for you? Was it just your partner saying, hey, you should just leave your government job? We can do so much better. Or was there anything else that was deep down inside of you that was wanting to start your own company, Engineering?
Yes, I think in the last 18 months before I opened my own company, the more you get promoted in state service, the more you get to see the political side of things. And I was not a big fan of that, let's say.
Mhm.
That you need to justify why projects are going this way. Local senator from the area wants update from you, a local representative from the area, she wants an update. And I go, well, this is not engineering anymore. This is becoming more of a half political, half engineering thing. And that was the push to go private.
Got it. Okay. So tell me more about your company. What does DAR Engineering focus on? What are your main projects? Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, DAR Engineering is a general transportation engineering company. We do highway design, highway planning, traffic engineering, construction management. And now we even do some design for telecommunication companies, fiber optic companies, and so forth. And mainly our specialty is those kind of municipality. We help some cities to design roadways, maintain roadways, and do the construction inspection for them. That's what our business is.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So, what are some big projects that you have worked on, or some unique projects that you've worked on?
In the last 20 years, any big projects that relates to highway expansion in the state of Wisconsin, we were involved. I don't know if
Wow.
you're familiar with the city of Milwaukee, which is the largest city or the business center of the state of Wisconsin. Uh,
Okay.
there is an interchange called the Marquette Interchange, which is my campus where I went. We were part of that project. We had a big part of all the sections of it. Some part we were the lead team, some part we were the sub-consultants doing that. And then there was the Zoo Freeway, which is the largest interchange in the state of Wisconsin, billions of dollar job. We were part of the team. There was a conglomerate of teams that designed. We were part of the time designing that project. And then when it came to be the construction management of it, and it lasted, this will be almost, or next year will be the last year. Like for 5 years, we were one of the lead inspection companies doing the inspection of construction of the bridges and the roadways. And then there was another big project that probably you heard of, Foxconn, building
Okay.
a factory in Racine, Wisconsin. So there's the I-94 that comes from Chicago, border with Illinois to Wisconsin coming in. That freeway was expanded from 3 lanes each way to 4 lanes each way. And with all the complications that does from the borderline all the way to the airport in Milwaukee that was expanded. We did some interchange design, and we were one another team, and we did the whole county of Racine. That was our area that
Mhm.
we designed. And now in the last 3-4 years, we were the guys we were part of the team that's doing the construction inspection. So any big project, I would say in the last 15 years that happened in Wisconsin, we were part of it.
Wow, that's amazing. And what makes you set apart from the other engineering companies in the area?
I think we were lucky enough that when we started our operation, we were able to attract talented people. Since I was part of the department, there was a lot of retired people from the state of Wisconsin that joined us. And that gave us a recognition of experience,
Okay.
recognition of the culture of the department, and a recognition that we have a unique expertise to perform good for the department.
And so, how long have you had your business so far now?
We started 2001, so this September will be 20 years.
20 years. And how old were you when you started DAR Engineering?
41.
41. Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. All right. So, how long did it take your business to start seeing some real traction in the beginning stages? Did it take you a while, or was it on a fast trajectory that you guys were going on?
I think when we started, we right away had a project. My partner was working for another company and he was the president engineer on that project. And when he quit, they kind of just gave us that project to us. And we started with 2 people. And I think within a few months, we were back to 6 people. Then we started winning some little design work here and there. I would say within 3 years, we started growing really fast.
Wow,
We
that's
went
awesome.
from 3 to 7, and within 5 years, we were almost 60 people.
Wow, that's awesome. And were there any tips or strategies that you used to grow so fast?
It's not something we really had, as I pointed out to you. I think in my business, what's important is the relationship you have with the client.
Got it.
Since I was part of the DOT, and now things are changing. The people I knew retired from the department, things are changing. But any advice I have for somebody who wants to do the kind of business I do, you got to have the trust of the customer. You got to have the expertise that they know they can trust you with a big project. You can have all the licenses you need, you can have all the educations you need, all the experience you need, but if you don't have that trust of the client in their eyes, you're not going to win any big projects.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, did you have to raise any capital to start your business?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay. And what did you do? Venture capitalist, or was it like bank loans?
No, it was the SBA, which is the most expensive loan you can get.
Uh oh.
But the truth of the fact is, when you start a business, first of all, it helps that you have a good credit. So anybody who's immigrant, I encourage that you have excellent credit. And the second thing is that you got to have a property where you can put your property as a collateral. But once you have those two things, the usually United States is great about supporting business startups. So the SBA has a loans since banks don't know you, they don't trust you yet. It's a lot more expensive, but at least the government's putting their skin on the table, trusting you. You're going to create a business and you're going to create employment opportunity for other citizens.
Abdulhamid, did you have any mentors that helped you out to start your business?
The only mentors really we had is a gentleman I met with the SBA that later actually joined the company and helped us get some contracts. He was a really good advisor because we knew the engineering business, but we didn't know how to deal with banks, how to get a business plan together.
Okay.
What are banks looking for? How you talk to a banker? The SBA has a great people to advise you.
Mm.
So we had a good guy at least at the office in Milwaukee at the SBA that we became friends, came to work for us at the end. That was a good mentor.
Got it. Got it. So I'm going to put the SBA loan in our show notes for people to check out. So thank you so much for that. Looking back at your immigrant entrepreneur career, how do you look at failures and how do you overcome them?
I think how you look at failure is a personal thing, I think. So to me personally, if you live, you're going to fail. That's part of
Right.
life.
Right.
So I really don't dwell on failure to me. To me, it's I set a goal in my mind and I want to achieve it. And any obstacle that comes in the way, it's the lessons you learn. So, but it's not something I sit down and think about it and say, well, this was this one and this was that one and nothing. But when you open a business or when you go to school or anywhere you go, it's part of life. Sometimes you're fortunate that Allah is going to bless you. Sometimes Allah is going to test you. It's just how you deal with it.
I read in the book that you make decisions really fast,
Yes.
right? And is that just the talent or characteristics that you just had? Or is that like a business mentality that you want to make decisions fast and move forward?
I think it's more about of spiritual side.
Okay.
To me, in Islamic tradition, is you pray a prayer, called Salat al-Istighfara, that you put in the hands of God, that you basically ask, God, if this thing coming toward my way that I'm thinking about it, if it's not meant to be, or if it's going to make my life worse, or if it's going to take me away from you, don't make it easy for me, basically.
Yeah.
If it's something that's good, and I'm going to be a moral person that's not going to leave your path, make it easy for me. And from there, I just jump head on after I do my prayer.
That's an awesome prayer. That's awesome. So let's switch gears and talk about the successes because it's important to talk about failures and the successes. Are there any successes that you would like to outline from your immigrant entrepreneur journey?
People define success different ways. To me, my biggest success that I see as a business owner, that it gives you an opportunity to live life the way you want to live.
Right.
It's not life where somebody else is setting the goals and political agendas on what to do. That's one thing. And second thing is that you have opportunities to help other people. To me, as an immigrant, the thing I take the best pride about it is the advice I provide for my younger brothers and the guidance I can give my younger brothers and my sons.
So, what does the American dream mean to you?
The beauty of America is this is a country that gives everybody opportunity. And I have seen that by myself. Are there challenges? Yes. Is there people perceiving you differently just because your name is Abdulhamid? Absolutely. Are you going to have obstacles? Yes. But there's no other country, at least in my view, that makes my kind of story true except the United States. Does the United States have a lot of problems? Yes. But it gives you opportunity that nobody else gives you, bar none. There's no other country, in my view, that will give opportunity that you have coming from Russia, that I have coming from Somalia, or somebody coming from Mexico, somebody coming from Brazil, somebody coming from Germany or Italy, or you name every country is here. No other country will be able to afford that. And actually, that's the advice my uncle, when I was leaving, he gave me, saying this is the country of opportunity.
Mm. So you kind of hung tight to that and never let it go.
No, he told me, and I seen it coming here. But I remember when I graduated, writing a letter to my dad saying that I'm coming back. And at that time, there was no internet or nothing. And he would send me back a letter saying that, no, get experience. Don't come back. They'll find out the Civil War. But my plan always was get as much experience, technical experience, field experience, then go back to Somalia. But really, God works in mysterious ways. And it didn't work out for me going back home.
Mm.
So US became home.
Why did you want to go back? Because life was good in Somalia?
No,
Well,
life was not, it's
besides
not
the Civil War.
No, life was not really bad or good. But to me, it was just being a good son to my father. My father wanted me back, then I'll go back. It's more of doing my duty more than anything else.
And so is giving back, either volunteering time or giving back to the community, something that is part of your business values?
Yes. And I don't know if that's a community value or practicing my religion.
Mhm.
So, yes, I do give back to the community and I do give back to Somalia too.
And do you think the entrepreneurial career path allowed you to do that?
Of course, that offers you a lot more leeway, a lot more resources to do that.
So what's next for you? What are some business goals for the next couple of years? Anything you can share with us?
Yes, I think now, at least my partner and I are thinking about, since we both are in our 60s, to transfer the business to our employers, to make it an ESOP, where the employers can buy up the business and continue the name of the company.
Okay.
And my goal is to go back somewhere in either Somalia or Northeast Africa and do something else. I don't know yet, but some kind of other business.
And what is that process to allow the employees to? Is it stocks,
Yeah, it's called ESOP. Employees, some I don't know what the ESOP stands, but
ownership, something like
yes,
that?
yes. It's a 3 or 4 year. We started. We have a feasibility study coming up now, and when you become an ESOP, the way I understand it, or what the lawyers tell me is, whatever profit you have, when you become 100% ESOP, you don't pay any more either state or federal income. So
Mm,
the employees can use those receipts to buy you up gradually in a agreeable length of years.
got it. Got it. Okay. So I know that you have, what is it, about 100 employees right now?
Yeah, it's seasonal. We swing by when construction stops in winter. We go from high 80s to low hundreds.
Okay. And what was that journey like for you? Because you were a government employee and now you're managing from 80 to 100 employees. That's a really big leadership role. It's a really big responsibility. How did you prepare yourself for that?
You really don't prepare, but what you quickly learn is when I was working at the DOT, you see different leaderships and you learn from them. And to me, I like to model the ones I liked.
Mhm.
Example I can give you is when I started with the DOT, I started at the region called Northwest. It's called now, but at that time it was called District 8. District 8 is way up in Superior, by Lake Superior, very cold area. You go there and you don't see anybody who looks like me or anybody who worships like me. So you are really unique when you go
Yeah.
there. But the district director, his name was Lee Crook, he made a big impression on me. Because I show up in a district and then he comes over and he talks to you. He makes you, he's the district director. I mean, he's my boss's 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 boss.
Mm.
Invites you at home. You meet his wife and family. And every Thursday we get paid. So every Thursday, the whole district went out bowling and came back. And he assigned me a mentor, a supervisor who was a mentor. Then I requested a transfer to come back to this area where I went to college. And it's a bigger district. And at that time, I wanted to go back to Somalia for the first time for a long time.
Mhm.
And when you're a young engineer, you only have like 2 weeks of vacation. So I didn't use my vacation. So I wanted to carry it over to January so I can go for 3 weeks. In order to do that, you need to get the blessing of the district director.
Mhm.
So I went to this district director, the office in Waukesha. My supervisor at that time says, well, you need to go talk to the district director and he will listen to you. So I went up to his office, I knocked on the door, and he doesn't even look at me. I knock on the door, then he looks at me with a kind of annoyed look and says, what do you want? I go, well, I came to talk to you. And he doesn't answer me again. So I knock on the door again and he says, well, sit down. I was a bother to him. While the other district director I had, he worked out of me. One time he will come to your desk, you want to have a coffee with me? And I'm really shy. I said, this big boss, why is he paying attention to me? So I quickly learned that if I ever become a boss, I really want to be more like a lead, not like this other guy who's always bothered by somebody stopping or someone. So I had supervisors and senior engineers that I learned from their management style what I liked and what I didn't like. So when I had my business, I really like to treat people the way people I like treated me. And that attracts more people to come to you. That builds trust.
So you kind of just slowly developed that natural sense of direction, natural sense of leadership where you were just completely open to
Yes.
talk to people, and regardless of their background, regardless where they came from, you would always sit down with them and build relationships.
Yes, you have to be, you want to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
You want to be fair. And that does not mean you're going to be weak and accepting and something doesn't work out. People will accept criticism from you if you treated them really well.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Wow, what an amazing journey. And so, what are some things you would advise the next aspiring immigrant that wants to start their own business listening to you right now?
Well, a couple of things. I think you got to know the field you're going into. You got to be really not an expert that you know what you're getting into. That's one. Second, you got to have a good credit, as I said before.
Mhm.
It's important to have a very good relationship with your banker, and that's with trust. Any form you fill in, anything you say or do, it's got to be 100% the truth. When things don't work out, pick up the phone, sit down with them, tell them, I picked up the loan. This was my projections. My projections are changing. And that's just going to build up trust between you and your bank. Another thing is to have a very good network in your business and know what's coming ahead. Always know what the plans are for the future, what's coming up. How can you be part of that? Or whatever you're selling, how can you modify your product to meet the demand that's coming up in the future? And if you are in a business like mine, your business is as good as the people. So you have to treat the people that you employ really, really good and really honestly. Without them, you have no business.
Mhm.
And once you realize that, you head in the right direction.
Mhm. Wow, such invaluable advice. And when you mentioned networking, are you part of any entrepreneurial groups, organizations, or how can someone reach out and develop their network?
In my field, there are professional associations that you join and you belong. And it doesn't have to be an official organization. Those guys include those, you attend annual conferences, you learn what's coming up in the business, American Society of Civil Engineers or the road builders of your state, if you're in my business, ACC, American Consultant Association. There are many things you can join, but there are always what I call the unofficial networks. That's up to you to develop it. who's expert in traffic design, who's an expert on bridge design. How you can reach to that lady? How can you reach up to that engineer that you think has done a great job, and start networking with them and picking their brains and what's coming up? How do we solve this problem or things like that? But you got to be seen in the network, and you got to be part of that community that you decided to be part of that business.
Yeah, make yourself known. Because a lot of immigrants think that they can do it all by themselves and they try to do this business all alone, solo. But it's really important, like you mentioned, networking, building relationships, whether it's with employees, clients, customers, or the bank loan officer, right? So
Yes.
thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, Abdulhamid, thank you so much. This concludes our podcast chat, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing all the amazing and awesome, powerful advice to all of us listening. And I truly appreciate your time, and I'm really excited to share your journey. So thank you so much, and I wish you all the best.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, for giving me opportunity to share my 2 cents worth of what I think is valuable.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If there are any links that were mentioned in this episode, make sure to check them out on my website under this episode to find all the links conveniently located in the show notes. I just wanted to ask for a quick favor. If you could please leave a review wherever you're at listening to this podcast. Also, if you're an immigrant entrepreneur and would love to be on my podcast, please email me and we'll get connected. I'll see you guys all next time for another exciting and impactful episode. Take care.